soon. I thank my colleague from Colorado, Mr. Buck, for leading this special order effort and for recognizing me to talk about this issue and the general problem in the Senate today of having legislation considered, debated, and passed in a way that we can go to conference committee. As he mentioned, the Senate's already failed to act, is currently failing to act as we stand here on over 270 House-passed bills. One of those bills is a really important one, very important to the committee on which I serve. I'm proud to be on the Financial Services Committee. The tradition of that position was held by my predecessor, Shelley Moore Capito, who served on that committee for 14 years, ably led by Chairman Jeb Henschling of Texas. We work in a bipartisan fashion as much as we possibly can to bring relief to the American people, to give consumers choices in banking products and the ability to get a small loan or get a mortgage for their house. We're doing very important work there. So as was mentioned, on June 8th of 2017, this year here, the U.S. House of Representatives, where I now stand, passed H.R. 10, the Financial Choice Act, by a vote of 233 to 186. I was very proud to vote for that legislation, as I know a lot of my colleagues. The Financial Choice Act, if you're not familiar with the bill, after the financial crisis in 2007, Democrats held all the chambers in the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they passed sweeping legislation that fundamentally changed the way our economy works for the worse. Much more interference in your lives in banking and the ability to make loans and consider requests for bank loans were done. Basically, Dodd-Frank is to the financial services industry what Obama is to the healthcare industry. It's a government knows better, one-size-fits-all, federal-mandated set of laws that have hurt the very people they claim they want to help. It hurts the same people they want to help. So we're repealing most of that, and we're going to empower consumers, give you the choices back. So we've passed this bill. Let me just give you maybe one example of something in the bill to be specific. There was something that was designated in the Dodd-Frank bill called too big to fail. You may remember that term, too big to fail. So that's a situation where Washington bureaucrats have decided that certain banks the theory is that they're so essential to the global economy that failure would be catastrophic. So it takes the ability to fail out of the bank's system, which then makes them act more risky. The big does not necessarily refer to the size of the company, just what the government decides is essential, too big to fail. So the first bank that was too big to fail was Bear Stearns, and on March of 2008, the Federal Reserve lent $30 billion to J.P. Morgan Chase to buy the failing investment bank. Bear was a small bank, but very well known, and there was a worry that it would destroy confidence in other banks. So your tax dollars were used to essentially bail out banks. So this bill repeals the authority of the Financial Stability Oversight Council to designate firms as systematically important institutions. It prohibits the use of exchange stabilization funds to bail out banks. Most Americans I talk to don't think their taxpayer dollars should be used to bail out banks. So this bill would stop that. So, you know, we passed that bill. We sent it to the Senate. We didn't think the Senate would pass the exact same bill, word for word, that the House passed. We thought they should consider our bill, take the parts they like, maybe change some parts, maybe add some parts, remove some, pass a bill in the Senate, and then we go to a conference committee to reconcile the differences. One of the biggest, travesties I've seen around here of the political process, Mr. Speaker, is the failure to have conference committees in the Congress any longer. The House passes all these bills, over 300 over there, 270 we're waiting for the Senate to do anything on, anything. And we wait for the Senate to act so we can have a conference committee and reconcile the differences. It's important to understand that no one in the House is demanding they get their way on every bill, every provision, all the time. We simply want to have a product sent to the Senate, have the Senate do their job, do their due diligence, pass legislation in whatever form they can get out of the Senate, and have a chance to go to conference committee, reconcile the differences. There's some give and take there. They won't get everything they want. We may not get everything we want. You can reconcile those differences. It has to go back and repass. Over the past 3 years, my third year in Congress now, I've taken to reminding folks things they learned in fifth grade grade school, about how I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill and how it's supposed to go to one chamber, then it's supposed to go to the other, and they appoint a conference committee to reconcile the differences. Instead, as the previous speaker, Congressman Biggs from Arizona mentioned, the filibuster is abused. You have 48 Democrats in the Senate who filibuster everything, everything. And for some reason, my colleagues on the majority side of the aisle, the Republicans, don't put the bills on the floor to make the American people see them filibuster and obstruct and shut down, avoid conference committees, avoid passing anything in the Senate that would require action, and therefore just stop anything from happening. And it's a travesty of the political process. Neither Republicans nor Democrats should stand for such an abusive system in the Senate. So I think we should put the bills over there and make them act. We've actually started passing pieces of the Choice Act, one small bill at a time, in order to get other stuff over to the Senate in the hope that they'll just do something, act on something. But we that, frankly, Mr. Speaker, because the Senate can simply pass any bill they want or any set of bills they want, and then we can consider it in the House as well. We've led by passing the Choice Act bill, which is the right thing to do. You know, as disappointing as it was to see the U.S. Senate fail to pass anything on health care, maybe the one silver lining was the American people could finally see what happens if 3 Republicans joined with 48 Democrats to vote against the bill. We did not have the votes to pass anything on health care, and the whole health care reform plan died at that moment. And we're sitting here today with a failing health care system that is going to continue to fail. Obamacare is going to continue to fail. It's not getting any better. It's getting worse. Look, our bill wasn't perfect, Mr. Speaker, but at least we did something in the House to address the problem. And I'm not saying this bill is perfect, the Choice Act for Financial Services, but we're doing something to address the problem that consumers are demanding where they can have more choice and more access to funds to buy a home or start a small business. We're doing something about it. And the Senate's doing nothing. They don't pass anything. In fact, we have passed all 12 appropriations bills in this chamber, all 12. They're sitting over there in the Senate waiting for someone to act. I think the first thing they should do is bring up the military funding bill. It's going to, you know, between now, we're in November already, in December, next month, funding runs out. We've passed our appropriations bills. The Senate is doing nothing on appropriations bills. They should bring that military bill to the floor of the Senate right now and have a vote. It passed this chamber with a strong bipartisan majority. Funding the military is not a partisan issue. There are votes, I believe, in the Senate and the House to fund the military. But if the 48 Democrat senators want to filibuster, abuse their power, abuse this filibuster tradition, which was mentioned is not in the Constitution, it's simply a courtesy extended to the minority party. If they want to continue to abuse that power, the American people should see them ruthlessly politically try to shut down the military and then try to blame the president or blame the House when they won't pass anything. They should pass a military appropriations bill, fund our troops, we'll reconcile the differences, send it to the president's desk. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how the process is supposed to work. That's what kept our democratic, Republican form of government, constitutional form of government, with Democrat elections, rule of law, a Republican Constitution. That's what's kept our country to this point functional and working well, having that bipartisan, bicameral process. What's currently happening is really a travesty to this process where it's being abused by the Senate. They have all these bills over there. It's high time for them to take action, pass something, pass the best product they can on this issue, and let's go to conference committee and reconcile the differences. So with that, I urge the Senate to act as quickly as possible on the Choice Act or whatever provisions they want to. We're trying to repeal the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. Another part of that, the fiduciary rule, has really hurt consumers. These are other parts of the Choice Act that need action. American people need and expect relief. So with that, Mr. Floor Leader, I'll yield back my time.
I thank the gentleman from West Virginia, and I thank him for his service on the Financial Services Committee.